I invite you to listen to the story of the day an intern spilled coffee on me and loudly proclaimed that her husband was the CEO of this hospital. I calmly called my husband. "You should come down here and see this. Your new wife is throwing coffee on me." The massive Boeing 787 touched down heavily on the runway at JFK International Airport. After more than 12 hours of continuous flight from Frankfurt, the roar of the engines gradually subsided, restoring a quiet stillness to the business class cabin. I closed the book I had been reading, smoothed the creases in my trousers, and pulled my carry-on from the overhead compartment as I walked down the jet bridge. The humid, bustling air of a New York summer hit me in the face, carrying the familiar, gritty scent of the city, a smell that, for anyone who has been away, feels strangely like coming home. My name is Catherine Hayes, and I am 32 years old. To the outside world, I am the woman who has it all, the sole heiress of the late chairman of the Apex Medical Group, holding a 60% controlling stake and the ultimate decision-making power in one of the largest private hospital systems in the United States. But the world does not see the crushing weight of that glittering title. Since my father's sudden passing from a severe illness, my shoulders have borne the burden of his colossal legacy. I have had to navigate a boardroom of cunning old money shareholders while trying to maintain a semblance of a happy family life. This business trip to Germany had lasted exactly 1 month. I had to personally visit factory after factory to negotiate the acquisition of a fleet of state-of-the-art medical equipment for our flagship hospital. This was a responsibility that should have fallen to my husband, Mark Thompson, the man currently occupying the CEO's chair, but I knew his capabilities all too well. Mark was handsome, charismatic, and a master of networking and charming people. But when it came to technical details or battling it out in negotiations in English, let alone German, he was completely out of his depth. Out of love for my husband and a desire to solidify his position before a demanding board of directors, I had agreed to step into the background. My official title was Chief Strategy Officer, but in reality, I was the one clearing the path, handling every major and minor detail so he could shine. A sleek black town car was waiting for me at the VIP arrivals terminal. It glided smoothly over the white stone bridge, heading toward the heart of Manhattan. I did not want to go home just yet. I wanted to report the results of my trip to the board, and more importantly, I wanted to see for myself how my husband had been running the hospital during my month-long absence. Apex University Hospital rose majestically from a prime piece of real estate on the Upper East Side. The 20-story modern marvel of blue-tinted glass reflected the brilliant afternoon sun, the culmination of my father's life's work. Looking at the polished sign with its stylized cross logo, a wave of pride washed over me, mingled with a vague, inexplicable anxiety. I told the driver to drop me at the main entrance, deciding to pull my own suitcase through the lobby instead of using the private executive entrance. I wanted to see the hospital's daily operations through the eyes of an ordinary visitor, to hear the authentic sounds of this place, not the polished versions presented in glossy boardroom reports. The main lobby was teeming with people. The automated chime of a PA system called out patient numbers. Families murmured anxiously to one another. The hurried footsteps of doctors and nurses created the unique, chaotic symphony of a busy hospital. The faint, clean scent of antiseptic lingered in the cool, centrally conditioned air. I stood in a quiet corner near the reception desk, adjusting the lapels of my white pantsuit, planning to observe for a moment before heading up to Mark's office on the 5th floor to surprise him. But my eyes were frozen by a scene unfolding in the center of the lobby where the main corridors intersected. A tall man in white scrubs was kneeling on the cold marble floor. It was Dr. David Chen, head of cardiology, my old friend from medical school, and the hospital's most indispensable clinical asset. He was performing CPR on a middle-aged man who had just collapsed from a hypoglycemic attack. Sweat beaded on David's broad forehead, running down his strong nose and dripping onto the floor. His movements were swift and practiced, yet filled with gentle, focused care. "Give him some space. Let the man breathe." David's deep, authoritative voice echoed through the lobby. "Nurse, I need a glucose meter and a glass of warm sugar water now." I stood there, watching him in silence. David hadn't changed in 15 years. He was the man who had spent his youth quietly looking out for me, a brilliant talent who never cared for fame or fortune. The day my father died, it was David who stood vigil by the casket for 3 days and nights, arranging everything perfectly, while Mark was busy entertaining foreign dignitaries. Watching the way he cradled the patient's head, his focus so intense that he was oblivious to the world around him, I felt a profound sense of admiration. That was the image of a true healer, a soul shining brightly in a world often clouded by money and ambition. But this beautiful portrait of medical ethics was instantly defiled by a splash of black ink. Just a few yards from where David was saving a life, near the constantly spinning revolving doors, a very young woman stood with her hands on her hips, her shrill voice tearing through the hospital's solemn atmosphere. "Hey, what is wrong with you? I told you to park my Mercedes in the shade. Why is it sitting out there in the sun? Do you have any idea how hot black leather seats get? You're going to ruin my designer purse." She was a girl of about 22. Her face was caked in heavy makeup, her lips painted a garish shade of red. She wore a hot pink bodycon dress, so short and tight that it was grossly inappropriate for a medical setting, revealing a stretch of skin that was more jarring than attractive. Pinned to her chest was a blue intern's badge that read Tiffany Henry. The elderly valet, a Vietnam veteran who had worked here since my father's time, his hair now white as snow, was bowing his head, flustered by the condescending attitude of a girl young enough to be his granddaughter. "I'm so sorry, miss," Henry stammered. "It's been so busy with cars coming and going. I haven't had a chance yet. I'll move it for you right now." Tiffany didn't even bother to listen. She stomped her foot on the marble floor. "Well, hurry it up. You move like a turtle. How does someone like you even get a job at a 5-star hospital like this? You've completely ruined my morning." Having finished berating the older man, Tiffany immediately pulled the latest iPhone from her designer handbag, switched to the front-facing camera, and her entire demeanor shifted in a flash. Her scowl transformed into a bright, sickeningly sweet smile as she began chattering into the screen. "Hi everyone, good morning to all my amazing followers. Your girl Tiff had a little drama with some incompetent staff this morning, but whatever. For the greater good of public health, I have to stay positive and cute. Show me some love, guys. Tap that heart and share my live stream." I glanced at my watch. It was 9:15 a.m. An employee, more than an hour late for her shift, dressed in violation of the code of conduct, was now standing in the main lobby yelling at an elderly colleague and live streaming her personal drama during work hours. The blood rushed to my face, a vein throbbing in my temple. Was this the professional standard Mark had sworn to me he would uphold? Was this the face of the culture my father and I had worked so tirelessly to build? The stark contrast between the two scenes, David on his knees, his shirt soaked with sweat as he saved a life, and this vapid intern putting on a ridiculous show for social media, made it impossible for me to remain a silent observer. I clenched the handle of my suitcase, took a deep, steadying breath to regain the composure of a leader, and took decisive steps towards the entrance. I walked over to Henry and gently placed a hand on his shoulder to reassure him. He flinched, then looked up, his age-worn eyes widening in recognition. He was about to greet me as chairwoman, but I quickly put a finger to my lips, signaling for him to remain silent. I didn't want my identity revealed just yet. I wanted to see how this little drama would play out. I turned to the girl, Tiffany, who was still absorbed in pouting and posing for her phone. "Excuse me," I said, my voice quiet but firm and authoritative. "This is a hospital, a place of healing, not a fashion show or a marketplace for you to be shouting at your elders. Furthermore, the workday begins at 8 a.m. It is now 9. You are late and you are causing a public disturbance. Interrupted from her narcissistic reverie of virtual hearts and compliments, Tiffany looked visibly annoyed. She lowered her phone, her eyes narrowing as she scanned me from head to toe with a dismissive air. I was wearing a simple, elegant white pantsuit with minimal jewelry. After a 12-hour flight, my face was tired and pale, with little makeup. In the eyes of this flashy young woman, I was probably just some frumpy patient's relative or some uptight middle-aged Karen. "And who are you to stick your nose in my business?" Tiffany sneered, her tone dripping with contempt. "I'm reprimanding my employee. If you've got nothing better to do, go find a seat somewhere else and stop bothering me. I'm trying to engage with my fans." With that, she raised her phone again, crudely shoving the camera in my face. Her voice became high-pitched and grating. "Look at this, everyone. My day is already ruined by some bitter old hag. Probably got dumped by her husband. Her life's a mess, so she comes out here to start trouble. Poor little Tiffany getting bullied even at work." The girl's insolence and audacity were beyond anything I could have imagined. My initial plan was a simple reprimand before heading to my office and having HR deal with her, but this level of disrespect could not be tolerated. "Put the phone down, now," I said, my voice low and menacing, my eyes locked on hers. "I am asking you to respect the hospital's regulations and the dignity of others. If you continue to film without permission and insult people, I will have security escort you out and file a formal complaint." "Ooh, are you threatening me?" Tiffany's eyes widened, her heavily made-up face twisting into a sneer. Suddenly, she did something I never would have anticipated. Holding a large, half-finished iced coffee, she pretended to turn awkwardly, but in reality, she deliberately slammed into me. The entire cup of cold, dark liquid drenched my pristine white pantsuit. The coffee spread quickly, soaking through the fabric and dripping onto the floor, forming a dark puddle at my feet. The sticky, chilling sensation made me shudder. The strong smell of coffee filled my nostrils. This suit had been a gift from my father on his last birthday. Now it was stained by this petty, calculated act. Before I could even react, Tiffany burst into a theatrical wail. Her fake sobs echoed through the lobby, drowning out the PA system and drawing the attention of everyone around. "Oh my God, what did you do? Can't you watch where you're going? You pushed me. You ruined my beautiful dress." She sobbed hysterically while simultaneously glancing at her phone's live stream, her performance worthy of an Oscar. Crocodile tears streamed down her cheeks. "Everyone, you're all my witnesses. This woman, some crazy patient's relative, just assaulted a healthcare worker. That's me. My baby gave me this dress. It's custom made. It costs like $2,000. It's ruined. How am I ever going to get this stain out?" A murmur went through the crowd. People who hadn't seen what happened looked at me with expressions of disapproval and pity. Some even took out their own phones to record the chaos. Seeing she had the audience's attention, Tiffany pressed her advantage. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper only I could hear. "You'd better apologize to me right now and pay for this dress. Do you have any idea who my husband is? My husband is Mark Thompson, the CEO of this entire hospital. He has the power to hire and fire anyone here. You mess with me, and you'll find yourself and your entire family blacklisted. No doctor in this city will ever treat you again." Hearing Mark's name come from the mouth of this brazen, vulgar girl felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My husband, CEO Mark Thompson, the man I had trusted implicitly, the man for whom I had sacrificed my own career to support? Since when did he have a young, arrogant mistress flaunting her power right here in this sacred workplace? I looked at the coffee stains spreading across my suit, then back up at Tiffany's triumphant face. Instead of exploding with rage, I suddenly felt an urge to laugh, a bitter, hollow laugh. I calmly took a handkerchief from my purse, wiped the sticky liquid from my hand, and then raised my head, my gaze as sharp as a scalpel. "You said your husband is CEO Mark Thompson." That's right, scared now, aren't you? Tiffany smirked. Get on your knees and polish my shoes, and maybe I'll ask him to forgive your little outburst. Before I could reply, a tall figure stepped between us, forming a solid wall. That broad, familiar back belonged to David. He had just finished with the emergency patient, and the faint scent of antiseptic still clung to his scrubs. He stood there, a mountain of quiet authority. He didn't need to shout. The calm, dignified presence of a seasoned physician and department head was enough to quiet the noisy crowd. Even the gawkers silently lowered their phones. He glanced at the coffee stain on my white suit, a flicker of pain and suppressed anger in his eyes. Then he turned to Tiffany, his gaze turning icy and sharp enough to make her flinch. "Miss Jones," David said, his voice low and firm, each word enunciated clearly. "Why are you causing a disturbance in the main lobby?" Seeing David, Tiffany was momentarily flustered, but she quickly regained her arrogance, banking on her connection to the CEO. After all, David was just a department head, an employee. Her man was the one in charge. "Dr. Chen, you saw what happened. This woman pushed me, spilled coffee all over the designer dress Mark gave me. I'm live streaming to expose these rude, violent people to the public so everyone can see what kind of trash comes here." David didn't even glance at her phone. He calmly pointed to the large plaque of hospital regulations hanging on the wall. "Please read aloud for me. Rule number 1, respect all patients and their families. Rule number 3, attire must be professional and adhere to the hospital dress code. Rule number 5, personal business and activities causing a disturbance are prohibited during work hours. Now, look at yourself and tell me how many of those rules you have broken." Tiffany was speechless, her face flushing with anger. She stammered for a moment before retorting, "I'm a special case. Mark said I could wear what I want, to be creative. You're just a hired doctor. What right do you have to lecture me? I'm going to tell Mark to fire you right now." Standing behind David, I heard her words and felt the full, bitter irony of the situation. So this was how Mark had been indulging his mistress behind my back, allowing her to run wild as if she owned the place. A lowly intern dared to call the head of cardiology a hired doctor and use the CEO as a shield for her own appalling behavior. David let out a short, humorless laugh, a rare expression on his usually serious face. "A hired doctor. You're right, but I was hired for my skills, for my integrity, and for my knowledge to save lives. And you? What are you doing here? You are cheapening this sacred profession of medicine, tarnishing the reputation of this hospital, all for a few virtual likes and hollow compliments online." He took another step toward her, his imposing presence forcing her to back away instinctively. "Miss Jones," David said, his voice low and firm, each word enunciated clearly, "why are you causing a disturbance in the main lobby? You claim to be CEO Mark Thompson's fiancée. Let me tell you a truth. A woman with an ounce of self-respect and class would never stand in a public place and brag about such a sordid affair. And she certainly would never behave so rudely to an elder like Henry." David's words were like needles piercing Tiffany's fragile ego. Her face burned with shame and rage. The crowd's opinion began to shift. The whispers were now aimed squarely at the scantily clad young woman. "The doctor's right. She's got no class. Look at how she's dressed. Total gold digger. That poor lady in the white suit just got coffee thrown on her for no reason. You can tell she's a decent person." Finding herself isolated, Tiffany resorted to her final trick, playing the victim. She shrieked into her phone, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone, they're ganging up on me. The doctors here protect each other and bully the weak. I'm all alone. Mark, baby, where are you? Come save your wife. They're going to kill me." David turned back to me, his expression softening, his eyes filled with years of unspoken concern. "Catherine," he asked quietly, "are you really okay? Did the coffee burn you?" I shook my head, managing a small smile to reassure him, though a storm was raging inside me. "I'm fine, David. Thank you for standing up for me." He was about to say something else, probably to call security, but I gently placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. "Don't dirty your hands," I whispered. "This is a family matter. Let me handle it. I want to see exactly who my model husband chooses to defend in this situation. I looked directly at Tiffany, who was still screaming Mark's name. Fine, you want to call Mark? I'll help you. Let's see how this little play ends. I calmly pulled my phone from my purse. The screen showed 10:15 a.m. According to the detailed schedule my executive assistant had sent me, Mark was in a critically important meeting with a delegation from the Department of Health and key investors from Singapore in the VIP conference room on the 5th floor. He was obsessed with his public image, always wanting to appear as a visionary, principled leader. I scrolled through my contacts to the name My Love, a name that once brought me warmth, but now made my stomach churn. I pressed the call button. It rang for a long time. He was probably in the middle of some grand speech about medical ethics and strategic vision, things he had parroted from me and my father. Finally, he answered. Mark's voice was a hurried whisper, but he still tried to maintain his usual fake tenderness. Honey, it's me. I'm in a huge meeting with the department and our partners. It's really intense. Did you land okay? Why didn't you tell me? I would have picked you up. I didn't answer his hollow questions. I calmly switched the call to speakerphone, turning the volume to maximum. The lobby fell silent, everyone straining to listen, including Tiffany, who had stopped her wailing. You're in a meeting? I asked, my voice cold and sharp as a winter wind. A very important one? Honey, I can't get away. Why don't you go home and rest? Take a bath, get some sleep. I'll be home early tonight to make it up to you, I promise. Mark continued his act as the caring husband. I cut him off sharply. You don't need to come home. You need to come down here to the main lobby right now. What? The lobby? For what? Honey, I told you I'm extremely busy. I said, get down here immediately, I yelled, my feigned composure finally shattering. All the pent-up anger and betrayal exploded. Come down here and see your new wife throwing coffee on me. See her insulting Dr. Chen and threatening to have me thrown out of the hospital my father built. The other end of the line went dead silent, a chilling silence. I could picture Mark's face drained of all color. He must have been so flustered that he accidentally hit his own speakerphone button. Or perhaps the VIP conference room was so quiet that my furious voice had been audible to every official and investor in the room. The sound of a chair scraping loudly came through the phone, followed by Mark's stuttering, incoherent voice. Catherine, what are you talking about? You're at the hospital? What new wife? Calm down. At the same time, Tiffany, standing opposite me, began to turn pale. She recognized the voice on the phone. It was definitely her Mark, the man who whispered sweet nothings to her every night. But why was this powerful man speaking to this frumpy old woman with such fear and submission? Why did he call her honey? You have 5 minutes, I said, each word a death sentence. If you are not in this lobby in 5 minutes, I will have my lawyer, Mr. Vance, bring all the necessary paperwork directly to your conference room to discuss this matter with you and your partners. I hung up, giving him no chance to respond. The hospital lobby was eerily quiet. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. All eyes were on me, the woman in the coffee-stained suit who radiated an unassailable authority, the aura of the true person in charge. David stood beside me, his arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction and trust on his face. He knew the real drama was just beginning. Tiffany was trembling, the phone nearly slipping from her grasp. She stared at me in utter disbelief, her red lips quivering. Who are you?" I looked at her and smiled, a smile that was both gentle and terrifyingly cold. "Why did you stop your live stream? Keep it rolling. Let's let everyone see how your husband deals with his legal wife." Those 5 minutes were the longest of Mark Thompson's life and the final moments of Tiffany's power-hungry delusion. I stood there, my back straight, waiting for the storm I was about to unleash upon the betrayers. The atmosphere in the lobby was thick enough to cut with a knife. The crowd of onlookers, from patients to nurses, instinctively parted, forming a large circle in the middle of the floor, like a miniature coliseum. At its center stood me, David, and Tiffany. Tiffany still hadn't recovered from the phone call. She had lowered her phone, no longer daring to point it at me, though her thumb was still secretly on the record button. A tiny sliver of hope must have remained in her shallow, calculating mind. She hoped I was just some powerful business associate of Mark's, or at worst, the boring stay-at-home wife he always complained about. She still believed in her youthful beauty and the sweet lies Mark whispered to her at night. "Don't you dare try to scare me," Tiffany stammered, trying to regain some courage, though her voice trembled. "Mark loves me. He told me. Even if you are his wife, it's just a title. Every man gets tired of his old wife and wants something new and exciting, and I'm very exciting." I didn't respond to her cheap provocation. I took out my phone and sent a short text to Arthur Vance, my most trusted legal counsel. "Arthur, bring file A to the main lobby. Immediately. It's time." Arthur replied instantly. "Understood, Madam Chairwoman. I'm in the elevator." David moved closer to me, his solid frame shielding me from the curious stares and phone cameras of the crowd. "Are you sure you want to do this here, Catherine?" he whispered. "It could damage the hospital's reputation." I looked up at him, my gaze unwavering. "A tumor has to be cut out at the root, David. It will hurt once, but then it can heal. If I try to preserve some fake sense of decorum, the hospital my father poured his heart into will be destroyed by them. Reputation is built on integrity and transparency, not on lies and cover-ups." David nodded, his eyes showing complete agreement. "I understand. I'm with you no matter what happens." His simple words were a small flame warming my frozen heart. For 15 years, he had always been there, quiet and constant. Meanwhile, on Tiffany's live stream, the comments were flying, but the tide had turned completely. "Oh my God, who is that lady? She sounds like a boss. Looks like the real wife just showed up. This intern is about to get wrecked. This is going to be good. Waiting for the CEO." Tiffany glanced at the comments, her face growing paler, but she still tried to argue with the air. "Don't believe her, guys. She's just a good actress. Just wait until Mark gets here. He'll throw her out on the street." The sound of an elevator dinging cut through the tension. The doors of the private executive elevator slid open. All eyes turned in that direction. Mark burst out like a whirlwind, his expensive suit disheveled, his tie askew, his forehead slick with sweat. He was breathing heavily, like he had just run a marathon, completely stripped of his usual polished demeanor. He saw the chaotic scene, and his eyes darted around frantically. They landed on Tiffany, who was standing there with a look of wounded pride. He froze for a second, but then his gaze met mine. I was standing with my arms crossed, looking at him as if he were a strange insect, and beside me stood David, regarding him with unconcealed disdain. Mark knew his reign was over. Seeing Mark, Tiffany latched onto him like a drowning person grabbing a piece of driftwood. She threw herself at him, shedding all her fake pride, clinging to his arm and whining, "Honey, you're here. Look, this crazy woman and that loser David were bullying me. She threw coffee on me and threatened to fire me. Call security and get them out of here." Mark stood frozen, his arm rigid in her grasp. He stared at me, his lips moving, but no words came out. Fear was etched across his face. He knew better than anyone that the woman standing before him was not just his wife. She was the chairwoman, the one who held his fate, his CEO title, and all the wealth he enjoyed in the palm of her hand. "Mark," I prompted, my lips curling into a smile that made him shudder. "What's the matter, CEO Thompson? Your beloved is crying for justice. Aren't you going to do something?" Tiffany, sensing Mark's strange hesitation, shook his arm. "What's wrong with you? Say something. Everyone is watching. You have to show them who's in charge." Mark turned to look at Tiffany. The look in his eyes was no longer the adoration of a lover, but pure, unadulterated hatred. He realized that this stupid, arrogant girl had just lit the fuse on the bomb that would obliterate his career. And then it happened. Smack. A sharp, explosive sound echoed through the lobby. Mark swung his arm and delivered a vicious slap across Tiffany's face. The force of the blow sent her staggering backward, tripping and falling hard onto the marble floor. Her phone flew from her hand, skittering across the tile, its live stream still running. Tiffany clutched her cheek, where the red imprint of 5 fingers was already forming. She looked up at Mark, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't understand what was happening. The man who just last night had sworn his undying love and promised to buy her a house and a car was now striking her in front of hundreds of people. "Shut your mouth," Mark screamed, his voice cracking with fear and rage. "What the hell are you talking about, calling yourself my wife? I don't know you. You're crazy. Stop spreading these lies." The entire lobby gasped. The reversal was shocking, brutal, and utterly pathetic. Mark turned back to me, his aggressive demeanor vanishing instantly, replaced by a groveling, desperate expression. He clasped his hands together, his voice trembling. "Catherine, honey, please, let me explain. I honestly have no idea who she is. She must be some obsessed fan or some delusional person trying to get attention. Please, you have to believe me. You're my only wife." I watched his pathetic performance with a rising wave of nausea. A man who refused to take responsibility for his actions, who would throw his mistress under the bus without a second thought to save himself. On the floor, after a moment of shock, Tiffany snapped. The physical pain was nothing compared to the public humiliation. She realized she had been betrayed, discarded like a used toy, and her aggressive nature took over. She shrieked, throwing all caution to the wind. "Mark Thompson, you dare hit me? You don't know me? Then who was it in my bed at the Mandarin Oriental last night? Who signed the papers for the condo in Hudson Yards in my name? You've been sleeping with me for months, and now that your rich wife is here, you pretend you don't know me?" Her accusations were like a bucket of ice water thrown in Mark's face. All his denials were now meaningless. The phone on the floor was capturing every word, every image, and broadcasting it across the internet. "You shut up right now." Mark lunged toward Tiffany to silence her, but David was faster. He stepped forward, grabbing Mark by the shoulder and shoving him back. The strength of a surgeon who kept himself in shape easily overpowered a man softened by years of lavish dinners and affairs. "That's enough," David said coldly. "Stop making a fool of yourself. You are disgracing this institution." I walked slowly toward Mark. The clicking of my heels on the marble floor sounded like a judge's gavel. I looked him straight in the eye, all traces of affection gone. "You said you don't know her," I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Then why does she have keycard access to your office? And why did her bank account receive a $2 million transfer from your secret offshore account last month?" Mark's eyes widened in horror. He never imagined I knew about that $2 million, the money he had embezzled from the new MRI machine procurement project. He thought he had hidden it so well through a series of shell corporations. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about that," Mark stammered, still trying to lie. Just then, Arthur Vance emerged from the crowd, a thick file in his hands. He walked to my side, bowed his head respectfully, and handed me the folder. "Madam Chairwoman, here are the complete bank statements, the purchase contract for the condo in Miss Tiffany Jones's name, and the security footage from the Mandarin Oriental for the past 3 months, all legally obtained." I took the file and threw it at Mark's feet. The white pages scattered across the floor, exposing the naked truth for all to see. "Read it," I commanded. "Read it and see exactly what you've been doing behind my back." Mark stared at the scattered papers, his face ashen. He knew he was defeated. He trembled and collapsed to his knees, grabbing the hem of my pantsuit, begging, "Catherine, honey, I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. Please, for the sake of our 10 years of marriage, forgive me. Just this once. I swear I'll break up with her. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave. Just please forgive me." The sight of the hospital CEO on his knees, crying and begging his wife, sent another wave of shock through the lobby. Oh my God, so she really is the chairwoman. The chairwoman went undercover. This is better than a movie. Serves him right. Cheating, embezzling piece of trash. Tiffany sat in a daze in the corner, watching the man who had been her ticket to a lavish life, groveling pathetically. She understood that her dream of being a CEO's wife had shattered into a million pieces. Not only that, she was now facing legal trouble for receiving stolen funds. I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet without a shred of pity. Our 10 years of marriage? I scoffed. When you were stealing money meant to save lives to buy your mistress a condo, did you think of our marriage? When you let her insult me and my employees, did you think of our marriage? I pulled my leg away from his grasp and turned to face the crowd of employees. In a loud, clear voice, I made my declaration. I am Catherine Hayes, chairwoman of the board for the Apex Medical Group. I'm announcing that, effective immediately, Mr. Mark Thompson is officially terminated from his position as CEO for gross ethical violations and suspicion of felony embezzlement. All decisions made by him from this moment forward are null and void. My announcement was like a sledgehammer, shattering the last vestiges of Mark Thompson's dignity. The lobby erupted in a chorus of murmurs that quickly grew into open discussion. I saw looks of triumph in the eyes of the nurses and staff whom Mark had bullied. I saw relief on the faces of the honest doctors. However, Mark wasn't ready to surrender. The survival instincts of a cornered rat kicked in. He lifted his tear-streaked face, but his eyes held a familiar, cunning glint. He struggled to his feet, trying to brush the dust from his knees and reclaim some of his former authority. "Catherine, you can't do this to me," Mark shrieked, with his voice laced with a false sense of victimhood. "You can't just use some unverified bank statements to accuse me of embezzlement. That $2 million was an investment for the new hospital wing project. The paperwork just hasn't been finalized yet. You're misunderstanding everything." He turned to the crowd, raising his hands as if taking an oath. "Everyone, listen to me. I am CEO Mark Thompson. I have dedicated the last 5 years of my life to this hospital. I would never do anything to harm it. This is a conspiracy, a blatant frame-up." I watched his clumsy performance in silence. An investment in a new wing, a pathetic excuse he'd concocted on the spot. Did he really think he could fool me and the law by blaming paperwork? I didn't need to say a word. Someone else stepped forward from the crowd, armed with the truth sharper than any accusation. An investment in the new wing? David's calm, steely voice cut through the air. He walked forward, holding a tablet displaying real-time inventory data. He stood opposite Mark, a head taller, his presence completely overwhelming. He held up the tablet for everyone to see. "Mr. Thompson, you claim you were investing in a new wing, but our asset management system tells a very different story. 2 weeks ago, you signed off on the purchase of 10 top-of-the-line ventilators and a new generation MRI system. This was at the exact time the chairwoman was in Germany negotiating those very deals. The total contract value was $2 million. How do you explain that?" Mark sputtered, sweat pouring down his face. The shipment is on its way. There are complications with customs. What do you know about international logistics?" David gave a cold, contemptuous smile. He swiped his finger across the screen, displaying an email. "I may not be an expert in customs, but I can read. This is a confirmation email from our German supplier, which they sent to me this morning. They confirm they have never received any payment from Apex for this order, and of course, no equipment has left their warehouse. Another collective gasp went through the lobby. David's evidence was irrefutable. He pressed on, his words like a surgeon's precise cuts, stripping away Mark's lies. You claim the equipment was on its way, yet our warehouse is empty. You used the excuse of needing an urgent down payment to secure the order, embezzled the funds, and transferred them to a shell company, while Miss Jones here was suddenly able to purchase a luxury condo for that exact amount. Did you really think the chairwoman wouldn't find out? Mark was speechless, stumbling backward, his body trembling. He never imagined David would be so well informed. He had always seen David as a bookish nerd, obsessed with medicine and surgery, not someone who would be tracking his financial misdeeds. I looked at David with a new level of admiration. It turned out that while I was away, he had not only excelled at his medical duties, but had also been silently protecting my family's legacy. He had gathered all this evidence, waiting for my return to help me excise the cancer in our organization. David turned to me, his gaze firm. Madam Chairwoman, as the head of cardiology and a member of the medical board, I can confirm that the lack of this equipment has already negatively impacted patient care. Mr. Thompson's actions are not just embezzlement, they are a direct threat to the lives of our patients. This is an unforgivable crime. David's final statement was the knockout blow. Mark sank to the floor, his eyes vacant, all fight gone from him. The truth was laid bare for all to see. The lobby now felt like a public courtroom. I knew this was the moment to restore order and reassert my authority. I stepped up onto the small platform at the reception desk and took the microphone from a trembling receptionist. To all staff, patients, and guests present here today, I said, my voice echoing through the large space, what happened here today is a source of great shame for Apex University Hospital. On behalf of the board, I offer my sincerest apologies to all of you for being subjected to this disgraceful scene. I looked out at the crowd, at the faces waiting for change. But however, we cannot let the actions of one rotten apple discredit the tireless efforts of the hundreds of dedicated medical professionals who save lives here every day. To stabilize the situation and ensure the hospital's operations continue uninterrupted, I will now make the following executive decisions. The room held its breath. First, I pointed at Mark, still crumpled on the floor. Mr. Mark Thompson is terminated and stripped of all titles and responsibilities. Our legal department will cooperate fully with the district attorney's office to prosecute him for embezzlement and investigate all of his past activities. Security, please escort this man off the premises. 2 large security guards immediately moved in and hauled Mark to his feet. He offered no resistance. His head was bowed in shame as they led him through the crowd toward the exit, followed by a chorus of contemptuous whispers. The image of the once dashing CEO was now that of a common criminal. Second, I continued, my voice softening with respect, the CEO position cannot remain vacant. We need a leader with integrity, talent, and compassion to steer this ship through the storm. That person is none other than the man who bravely stood up for what is right today. I turned to David, smiled, and gestured toward him. I am proud to appoint Dr. David Chen as the interim Chief Executive Officer of Apex University Hospital, effective immediately. I am confident that with his skill and his moral compass, Dr. Chen will restore this hospital to its rightful place. David was slightly taken aback by my swift decision, but he quickly composed himself. He stepped up onto the platform beside me and bowed his head to the crowd. Instantly, a roar of applause erupted. It started with the junior doctors and nurses and quickly spread to department heads and even patients' families. The thunderous ovation was not just for David. It was an endorsement of my decision. It was applause for justice served. David looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and resolve. He took the microphone and spoke briefly but powerfully. Thank you for your trust. I promise to do everything in my power to build a healthcare environment that is clean, transparent, and puts the patient first. Thank you." While Mark was being led away and David was being celebrated, there was still one loose end. Tiffany, the once arrogant intern, was now huddled in a corner, her face a mess of smeared makeup and tears. Seeing that the attention was off her, she tried to sneak toward an exit, but Arthur Vance spotted her. He signaled to security, who blocked her path. "Miss Jones, where are you going in such a hurry?" Arthur asked, his tone polite but chilling. "We haven't yet discussed the matter of the chairwoman's suit or the reputational damage you've caused the hospital." Terrified, Tiffany turned to me, her eyes pleading. Her dream of being a tycoon's wife was over. Her only support system was arrested. She had nothing left but a mountain of legal trouble. Madam Chairwoman, please forgive me," she whimpered, falling to her knees on the cold floor. "I know I was wrong. I'm young and stupid. Mark manipulated me. Please don't fire me. Don't sue me. I don't have any money to pay." I stepped down and walked toward her, looking at the trembling girl at my feet. I didn't feel triumphant, only a sad pity for a life so misguided. "You say you were manipulated. Who was it that threatened to have me thrown out? Who screamed at an elderly valet? Who live-streamed herself bragging about ill-gotten wealth? Those were your choices. You were blinded by greed and a delusion of power that never belonged to you." I turned to my lawyer. "Arthur, terminate Miss Jones's internship immediately for gross misconduct and also prepare a file for the DA's office regarding her role as a recipient of embezzled money. That condo was purchased with stolen money. She will be required to return every cent." Hearing this, Tiffany collapsed completely, sobbing uncontrollably. She knew her life was over. The luxury condo, the designer bags, the lavish trips, it would all be seized. She would be thrown back into a harsh reality, branded with a stain she could never wash away. David walked over. He didn't say another word of reprimand. He took a small business card from his pocket and placed it gently on the floor in front of her. "This is the card of a very good psychiatrist. I think you need help with your personality disorder and delusions of grandeur. I hope that after you've paid the price for your mistakes, you learn how to be a decent human being before you try to be a famous one." David's act, though gentle, was the most profound punishment. It stripped away her last shred of pride, pointing out that she was not just a criminal, but a person with a sick soul. 2 security guards came and lifted Tiffany to her feet, escorting her out. Her cries faded away behind the glass doors. The lobby returned to its normal rhythm, but the air felt cleaner. The crowd dispersed. Doctors and nurses returned to their duties. The automated PA system chimed on as if nothing had happened. I leaned against the reception desk, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The adrenaline rush was gone, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary fatigue. I had endured a long flight, a devastating emotional shock, and a tense showdown. I had won, but my heart felt empty. What was this victory worth when the husband I had once loved was revealed to be such a monster? The family I had fought to protect was now officially broken. David approached me with a bottle of water already opened. He said nothing, just handed it to me and stood in a way that shielded my face from the harsh sunlight streaming through the windows. "Drink some water, Catherine," he said softly. "You did well. Your father would be so proud of you today." I took a small sip. The cool water soothed my dry throat and the bitterness in my soul. I looked up at him, my eyes stinging. "David, I'm so tired. I thought I was strong, but this hurts more than I imagined." He looked at me with deep compassion, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. It was a comforting, steadying touch. "Of course it hurts. You're human, not made of steel," he soothed. "But you were brave enough to face it and cut out the cancer. Now it's time to heal. I've got things here. Go home and rest." I nodded weakly. I needed to go home, but not to rest. It was time to prepare for the next battle, the divorce. Arthur Vance walked over, still holding the file. He understood immediately. Madam Chairwoman, I have already drafted the divorce petition. With this evidence of infidelity and embezzlement, the court will grant it swiftly. Would you like to sign? I took a deep breath, mustering my resolve. Give me the pen. I signed my name with a firm, unwavering stroke. That signature ended 10 years of my life, ended the illusion of a happy family, and opened a new chapter. Arthur, begin the proceedings immediately. Freeze all our joint assets. I don't want him to be able to touch another cent. I want him to leave with nothing but the clothes on his back. Yes, Madam Chairwoman, Arthur said, taking the signed petition with a look of deep respect. I turned to David, a small, weary smile on my face. Thank you, David. I don't know what I would have done without you today. He smiled warmly, his grin lighting up his serious face. Don't be a stranger. In his final days, your father realized what Mark was, but it was too late. He made me promise I would always look out for you. A man keeps his promises. I looked deep into his eyes and saw not just friendship, but a profound, steady affection that I had overlooked for so many years. But this wasn't the time for that. I needed time to heal, and he understood. I pulled my suitcase and walked out of the hospital. The afternoon sun cast my long shadow on the pavement. I walked with my head held high, leaving the ruins of my past behind me. Ahead lay a future full of challenges, but also full of hope. And I knew, for the first time in a long time, that I would not be walking it alone. The peace that followed the storm in the hospital lobby was merely the calm before the tsunami. I had just arrived home, not even had the chance to collapse onto my bed when my phone began buzzing incessantly. It wasn't one call, but a flood of notifications from news alerts and social media platforms. I opened my phone to a barrage of sensational headlines and maliciously edited photos spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Healthcare heiress assaults young intern in jealous rage. The real story. Cheating wife and doctor lover frame husband to seize company. Drama at apex. I would like to answer that question, David said, his deep voice carrying clearly through the speakers. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. Mrs. Hayes and I are colleagues and nothing more. Our professional relationship is built on mutual respect, trust, and a shared commitment to patient care. Any insinuations otherwise are deliberate falsehoods designed to mislead the public and damage reputations. A murmur ran through the crowd as cameras clicked, but David's composed tone silenced any further whispers. I took a slow, deliberate breath, rising to my feet. My heels clicked against the polished floor, commanding attention. Thank you, Dr. Chen, I said, my voice steady, authoritative, and unwavering. Let me address the people directly. The videos and edited clips circulating online are manipulated and incomplete. They were deliberately crafted to misrepresent reality and attack both my personal integrity and the hospital I oversee. My husband, Mr. Mark Thompson, engaged in embezzlement, infidelity, and abuse of his position. I took decisive action not out of personal vendetta, but to protect Apex Hospital, its employees, and the patients who depend on us every day. Flashes went off as reporters scribbled notes furiously. I continued, my tone cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Let me be clear. This hospital is built on integrity, transparency, and excellence. No falsehood, no smear campaign, and no attempt at public manipulation will undermine that. We will cooperate fully with authorities to investigate and prosecute all illegal activities. Apex University Hospital will continue its mission, uninterrupted and stronger than ever. David gave me a small, reassuring nod from beside me. Together, we had reclaimed the narrative, faced the storm head-on, and sent a message that truth and justice could not be silenced. The room fell into a tense, respectful silence, the weight of our words sinking in. Camera lenses still glinted, but now the story was ours to tell, and the world was listening. Regarding the relationship between Chairwoman Hayes and myself, I can confirm that we are longtime friends from medical school, trusted colleagues, and professional partners. There is absolutely no illicit affair, as the rumors claim. He paused, taking a breath. However, I will not hide one truth. I have had feelings for Catherine for 15 years, since we were students, through her marriage and to this day. It is a love born of respect and admiration, but I have never once crossed the ethical line of a friend or a physician. I kept those feelings to myself so that she could be happy. But today, seeing her slandered by a coward, I can no longer remain silent. David's frank and courageous confession stunned the entire room. No one expected a man as successful and private as him to publicly declare his unrequited love to defend the woman he cared for. The murmurs died down, replaced by looks of sympathy and respect. David continued, signaling an assistant to project an image onto the large screen behind them. It was a DNA lab report. As for the real reason Mr. Thompson was fired, this is the evidence we held back yesterday, hoping to grant him a final shred of dignity. He has proven he doesn't deserve it. This is a DNA test confirming the paternity of Mr. Mark Thompson and a 3-year-old boy currently living at the Rosebud Children's Home. The auditorium erupted in gasps. Every camera swiveled toward the screen. Mr. Thompson fathered a child with another woman 4 years ago, long before he met the intern Tiffany Jones. After the mother passed away from an illness, he abandoned his own son at a children's home. He never once visited or provided any support, despite living a life of luxury. A man who not only cheats on his wife and embezzles from his company, but who also abandons his own flesh and blood. Does a man like that have any right to speak of morality or play the victim? This revelation was a knockout punch that completely decimated public opinion. All suspicion against me vanished, replaced by a wave of intense fury directed at Mark. The image of the dignified CEO was shattered, replaced by the portrait of a cold, heartless monster. I looked at David, overwhelmed with emotion. To protect me, he had exposed the deepest corner of his own heart. He had silently found that poor child to help me turn the tide. The press conference ended in a decisive victory for the truth. The subsequent news reports were a complete reversal, praising my courage and David's integrity while fiercely condemning Mark's actions. After the press conference, Mark was completely ostracized. He lost not only his job and reputation, but was also relentlessly attacked by the public. Friends who once fawned over him now avoided his calls. The money he had managed to hide was quickly depleted by PR firm fees and his own lavish spending habits. Desperate and broke, Mark remembered the expensive gifts he had lavished on Tiffany, the luxury condo, the car, the designer jewelry. He decided it was his property and that he had the right to take it back to pay his debts and hire a lawyer. He showed up at her condo, the one my lawyers had placed a lien on but hadn't yet seized, drunk and furious, banging on the door. When Tiffany opened it, her expression was not of longing, but of pure contempt. She too was facing ruin, fired, broke, and publicly shamed. "What are you doing here? Come to leech off me? I'm about to be on the street myself." "Give me back the car keys and all the jewelry I gave you," Mark screamed, storming into the apartment. "It was my money. You have to give it back." "Your money?" Tiffany laughed mockingly. "That was the money you stole from the hospital. It's evidence now. Did you really think I was stupid enough to keep it and go to jail with you? I sold it all to pay my fines and legal fees." Hearing this, Mark snapped. He lunged at Tiffany, but this time she fought back. She clawed at his face, bit his arm, fighting like a cornered animal. "You pathetic loser! You dare hit me again, I'll kill you!" A vicious brawl ensued. The sound of breaking furniture and shouting echoed through the hallway, prompting neighbors to call the police. When the NYPD arrived, they found a pitiful scene. Mark and Tiffany, clothes torn and faces bruised, wrestling on a floor littered with broken glass. Both were arrested for disorderly conduct and assault. The next day, photos of Mark in handcuffs, his face swollen, sitting next to a disheveled Tiffany, appeared online with the headline, "Bitter End. Disgraced CEO and Mistress Brawl Over Stolen Fortune." Reading the news, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound pity for lives ruined by their own greed. A month later, the divorce proceedings began. Mark sat opposite me in court with a state-appointed public defender, looking 10 years older, his hair streaked with gray. The judge reviewed the mountain of evidence against him. He pled guilty to everything, knowing it was hopeless. When the judge granted me sole custody of our children, Mark finally broke down, sobbing, perhaps the last shred of his humanity surfacing. As he was led away to face his criminal trial, he passed me and whispered, "I'm sorry, Catherine." I didn't reply. An apology now was meaningless. I turned and walked toward the sunlit courthouse doors. David was waiting outside, a warm smile on his face. The sky over New York was brilliantly clear, heralding a new beginning. In the aftermath, I poured all my energy into rebuilding Apex. With David as CEO by my side, we purged the corruption Mark had left behind and revitalized the hospital's mission. Apex not only recovered, but thrived, becoming a beacon of medical excellence and integrity. Mark was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for embezzlement. Tiffany, I heard, ended up working at a rundown convenience store in a small Midwestern town, her dreams of fame and fortune reduced to the quiet beep of a cash register. 1 year after that fateful day, on a crisp autumn evening, David took me to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Hudson River. After the meal, he slid a small, elegantly wrapped box across the table. Inside was not a diamond ring, but a stunning, intricately detailed crystal model of a human heart. "Catherine," he began, his voice filled with a depth of emotion spanning 16 years. "I am a cardiologist. I've spent my life studying the heart, but the one heart I've never fully understood is yours. This crystal heart represents my feelings for you. Transparent, unconditional, and constant. I know you've been hurt, and your heart needs time to heal. Would you let me be your personal physician and take care of that heart for the rest of your life?" Tears of happiness streamed down my face. I looked from the crystal heart to the man before me, the boy from med school, the brilliant doctor, the man who had been my anchor in the storm. "Yes, Dr. Chen," I whispered, smiling through my tears. "I will, but you have to promise this treatment plan lasts a lifetime." 5 years later, we stood side by side, cutting the ribbon for the new state-of-the-art Catherine Hayes wing of Apex University Hospital. Later that afternoon, our family, me, David, and my 2 children, who now lovingly called him Dad, strolled through the hospital gardens. My kids ran ahead, their laughter filling the air. As we passed a side gate, I saw him, a middle-aged man in shabby clothes, standing across the street. His hair was completely white, his face etched with hardship. It was Mark, released early for good behavior. He had nothing, no family, no career, no home. He just stood there, watching us with an expression of profound regret. David squeezed my hand. "Do you want to talk to him?" I watched Mark for a long moment, then shook my head. The anger and hatred were gone, replaced by a quiet pity. The past was the past. Raking it up would only disturb the beautiful peace we had worked so hard to build. "No," I said, turning to my family with a smile. "Let's go home. The kids are hungry." I took David's hand, and without looking back, we walked toward the warm, setting sun. I understood then that the best revenge is not to crush your enemies, but to build a life so full of happiness and light that their darkness can no longer touch you. And I, Catherine Hayes, had done just that.